Welcome to Generation Digital Workforce, the podcast that's here to explore the role of robotic process automation and other digital technologies. Whether you're just getting started or you're looking for advanced strategies and tactics, if you're curious about where human and digital workers are coming together to transform the future of work, then this podcast is for you. All right, let's get into the show.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brad Hairston with Blue Prism. Today on the Generation Digital Workforce podcast, my guest is Michael Heric, a partner with Bain Company who is based in New York City. I will be talking with Michael about how companies can optimize the value they are receiving from automation via the digital workforce. Michael, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Brad.
So why don't you tell us a bit more about your role at Bain and how robotic process automation has become a key component of the work you and your colleagues do for your clients?
Sure. In my role at Bain, I lead our automation capabilities globally, and it's support client engagements in automation, everything from transforming the customer experience to using automation as a key component of improving operations from the front office to the back office. And so we use automation to improve capabilities of our clients.
Awesome. So, Michael, why don't you start by just talking about what you think the current state of the union is of the digital workforce in the market?
Sure. I would say that we're still in the early stages. As you know, RPA has been one of the fastest growing enterprise software segments with rapid growth in many industries like financial services and telecom. It's quite pervasive. For most of the Global 2000, you'll see at least some experimentation with RPA, as well as other forms of automation have been around for quite some time. So it's a very exciting time to be in RPA and just in automation in general.
Yeah, and Michael, I saw your article last week in the Wall Street Journal where you were quoted very heavily saying that CFOs are beginning to accelerate their automation initiatives, in the midst of this pandemic. So, can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure, Brad. First, what we would say is obviously this pandemic is a terrible human tragedy for so many, and our hearts go out to everyone impacted, by this very challenging time. What I would say is that, we do believe that automation is likely to accelerate as a result of the pandemic, and that's for a variety of reasons. I think first, as we all know, while automation offers many exciting benefits, it's been frustrating for many companies to deploy at scale. And I think what you're going to see with this pandemic is that automation can be very helpful. It can be very helpful in terms of delivering services to clients at a very basic level more effectively. It can be very helpful with business continuity. And you see that, for example, with call center operations and the importance of using things like, chatbots. And it can be very helpful for enabling work from home. And so our belief is that this pandemic can be helped through the use of greater adoption of automation.
Okay. So what are some of the reasons that companies have failed to scale their digital workforce?
Sure. Clearly, there's a lot of excitement, and you'd be hard pressed to find, a large company globally that's not at least experimenting with some automation, whether it's RPA or another form of automation. And there's lots of activity, but a great deal of difficulty in actually scaling these into larger deployments. And I think a big part of that may be how companies are going about it. For many companies, they, have a project manager, they get a license, and they're essentially searching for that right process or task to automate. And then they sort of build a business case, one bot at a time, if you will. We think, though, that automation should actually be part of a company's, corporate strategy, part of the corporate agenda that's actually driven, from the top. So companies really need to take a step back and see how automation fits into a broader transformation of their entire company's operations, if you will.
How many companies do you encounter that truly, link automation through the digital workforce to their corporate transformation goals? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Most management teams, when they develop a corporate strategy, consider talent a critical part of that. And talent takes many forms. The digital workforce should be part of that talent equation that fits into the corporate strategy. For many companies, automation can just be a pilot project, right? It can be in the shared services organization or with a junior level person who's trying to get a pilot or proof of concept going to just demonstrate the value around automation. But it's not necessarily on the agenda of the C-suite. And we think that, for those companies that do that, that put that on the agenda of the C-suite, you can really make a step change in terms of how automation can propel your strategy going forward. So I would say that it starts with making automation a part of that broader corporate strategy, to make it sponsored by the executive team. And that's really where it starts. And, in terms of the number of companies, that's a small number of companies today, honestly. And I think you're going to see that rapidly grow as automation becomes a critical component of a company's strategy going forward.
So let's talk about how organizations that have stalled out and are not effectively scaling their digital workforce, how can they get on the right track?
Sure. The first thing we try to bring here is to think about the overall holistic transformation and how automation fits into that. So, what is the total size of the prize around automation? This isn't just a $100,000 opportunity. This needs to be a multi-million-dollar opportunity. So, for example, I'm working with a company right now in the healthcare space, and for that particular company, they're setting goals in the hundreds of millions, billion-dollar opportunity here. And that really energizes the organization and is seen as something much more exciting. It's also exciting when you can tie this to something beyond cost. So, for example, with another client that we worked with, it was really around improving revenue. So, reducing, for example, revenue leakage, as an example. And so, when you think about these bigger opportunities beyond just cost, and even the cost portion, if you can sort of frame that into a much larger opportunity that can really transform the organization across multiple functions, you really drive a lot more excitement around it. And that is the first step in sort of driving, a scale deployment. The second thing in our mind is that to do all these things, it's really important to have the right governance and change management in place. So getting people to embrace automation, finding those automation champions, and thinking about change management, from day one, thinking about it even before you even generate an idea around automation, getting people excited about what automation can do for them. And so if you have the right governance and you have the right change management in place, we feel like that can be the second key ingredient in really helping companies break through and effectively scaling their digital workforce.
So, Michael, you're talking a lot about how automation, needs to be linked to, corporate strategy. It needs to be linked to a broader strategy, which implies, executive level support and involvement. So, could you just speak about, how important is C-level sponsorship to the long-term success of the digital workforce?
Our view is that it needs to start there. It needs to be part of the executive team's agenda. For example, every leadership team has a dashboard where they are looking at results. Automation should be on that dashboard. There should be an understanding also around the impact of automation. I think there's a lot of discussion around, number of bots in production or number of processes or tasks automated, but unless it has true financial impact, people are always going to question the value of automation. That's one area where we do see a lot of skepticism resulting from automation. A lot of work can be automated, but then companies will question the value, right? Did they realize the value from that automation in terms of improved revenue, better customer experience, or reduction in costs? So we think it's absolutely essential that it's not just about automating things, but also in the back end, are we realizing the value of the automation? and seeing it go through right into the P&L and into budgets.
Okay. Yep. So, Michael, how do you make sure then that companies that have invested in the digital workforce get the full value from it?
I think automation is really a cultural change. And what's required to get full value is to think about how work is done with digital workers involved. I think what you see is many companies, as we said, get a license and they search for a task or to automate, but they don't fundamentally change how work is done. I think to really create breakthroughs around getting full value from automation, you have to re-engineer the work, right? With automation included or digital workers included. You need to redefine people's roles. I think what you see in many companies is that they'll automate their work, but they won't necessarily, re-engineer what's left over. And that's something that Bain has spent a great deal of time doing with our clients. It's very similar to outsourcing and offshoring if you think about it. When many people outsource to a third party, right? To get those costs out or to change the process, they have to re-engineer the retained work afterwards to make sure that they get both the value or the savings from outsourcing, as well as that they do the work properly working with that third party. So it's no different around automation. You need to do all of those fundamental things. It's not just about the technical mechanics of, finding the right, use case to automate and then, deploying automation in the right way technically. It's also about re-engineering those processes to make them work in the context of automation.
Okay. So, Michael, how is Bain uniquely positioned to help companies address these challenges that you've talked about today with the digital workforce?
I suppose the good news and the bad news here is that our view is achieving success with automation is less about great technical skills or the technology itself. We think it's often all the other issues around automation that are really preventing companies from making automation a huge success. Everything from getting alignment around the senior management team to helping clients think through how is automation a part of enabling the broader corporate strategy, to driving the change management and the right governance, to value realization. How do you make sure that you're actually capturing the value from automation? And our role and where we think we excel is around helping clients in all of these areas where we find that these are the real big roadblocks to making automation a success.
Michael, thank you so much just for joining me today. I really appreciate all of your insights. Really good stuff.
Thanks, Brad.
You've been listening to Generation Digital Workforce. If you want to hear more about RPA, AI, and other cognitive technologies that are shaping the future of work, join us next time as we continue to go deeper on these topics with industry innovators and experts. To make sure you never miss a future episode, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player. And if you've liked what you heard today, please leave us a review. It's one of the best ways to help more people find valuable content. For show notes and more info, visit us at blueprism.com/podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.